Alright, hello everyone, welcome to my first episode of our Tainted Grail lore series. I'm Internet Tomato, and today we're diving into one of the most iconic elements of Tainted Grail, which are the Menhirs. If you've played Tainted Grail Conquest of the Fall of Avalon, you've seen these eerie statues. They are a key element of the world, and in the board games, they are the heart of the story, protecting humanity from a chaotic force called the Weirdness. But if you've only played the video games, you're missing a key piece of the puzzle. As someone who's battled through the Tainted Grail board game, which includes the core campaign, Age of Legends, The Last Night, and the Red Death, I've discovered secrets that reveal the Menhirs' true origins, their creators, and why they're failing. This is a tour into the lore, gameplay, and insights I've found surrounding the Menhirs. Whether you're from the deck-building roguelite in Conquest, into the new Fall of Avalon RPG, or a Tainted Grail board game fan like me, there's hopefully something here for you. We'll explore the myths, the truths, and the tragedy of these ancient guardians, with quotes from the board game to bring Avalon to life. So settle in and let's unravel the mystery of the Menhirs. If you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, consider subscribing, and drop a comment as to what I could go over next time. So yeah, let's get started. But before I continue, I just want to briefly go over some things. So for one, there will be some spoilers, so if you're considering getting the board game, please do, as it is one of the best board games I've ever played, and I adore what Awaken Realms has accomplished with it. It really is extraordinary. I'll try to keep the overall story spoilers to a minimum, but the mystery of the Menhirs is a core part of the first half of the core game. The other detail I need to go over is the terms both in what games I mean and what these Celtic terms are. So when I say the core game, I mean the board game titled Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. And when I say the RPG, I mean this game that you're seeing now, more than likely, which is the video game with the same title of Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. Also, the first Tainted Grail video game is called Tainted Grail Conquest, but for some reason I think it shows up on Steam as just Tainted Grail. The other bits I want to clarify are related to Avalon, the Weirdness, and Menhirs. So first of all, Avalon, which you see here, is the island where all of Tainted Grail, well, all of their games, except for the Red Death, are located. Approximately 600 years ago, prior to the core game, Conquest, and the RPG, King Arthur landed on the shores of Avalon and ended up conquering the island. The Weirdness is a chaotic mist that can alter reality, such as making a person grow horns or making metal edible. It's known to have alterations to a person's psyche, and they can go mad. Avalon is covered in this mist that amplifies its chaotic power during the night in particular. As for Menhirs, the writers of Awaken Realms, which is the writers of Tainted Grail, they drew some inspiration in the real world. There is such a thing as a Menhir or Menhirs, but they are much more simple. Generally, they are 1 to 10 meters tall, but are either unhewn or minimally shaped. The two popular references that I've found are the Standing Stones of Stennis, which are found in Orkney, Scotland, whose purpose goes back to Norse mythology and rites, rituals, and ceremonies therein. And then there is the Karnak Menhirs, found in northwestern France, whose purpose ranges from graves to possible druidic gatherings. In Tainted Grail, they diverge from that, though. I mean, as you can tell, it is much more grim than just simple stones. It's pretty cool up there, by the way. I love that effect. It's like a webbing, isn't it? But anyway, let's kick things off with some basics. So what are Menhirs and Tainted Grail? Well, Menhirs are ancient statues that dot the island of Avalon, a dark Arthurian-inspired world where hope is fading and monsters lurk in the mist. So picture a towering stone figure, skeletal and multi-armed, draped in tattered robes with a fiery glow pulsing at its core. They repel the weirdness by a considerable range, though in the board games, Menhirs are the only thing that repels the weirdness. That appears to not entirely be the case in the RPG or in Conquest. I have my own theories about how that can happen, how there is a difference. It is mentioned in the RPG about Excalibur having some sort of an effect, but I think that there is a little bit more to it than that. The board game describes Menhirs repeatedly as guardians, and they'll use imagery to detail the feeling of being watched. That's the kind of descriptions the board game nails home. In the video games of Conquest and the RPG, Menhirs are more so in the background. While in Conquest, that's considered your safe zone. In the RPG, it's almost non-existent in the first act, except for the moment you touch the core of a Menhir in the Island Asylum, which I'm sure there are some people who likely, forget or don't realize that that's what it was. Though the full game is not released as of this video's recording, only Connacht will have a Menhir element, as far as I can tell. In contrast, the board game's Menhirs are the backbone of the story and the gameplay. They're humanity's only defense against the weirdness, a chaotic force that spawns monsters, warps reality, and drives people mad. Without Menhirs, Avalon's villages would be overrun and travel would become impossible. The first time I played the core campaign, I was struck by how painful it felt to keep those statues lit. Half the game was spent satiating the Menhirs, and every choice mattered. In the video game, they're more static, but their presence still sets a grim tone and still adds to that. So why are these statues so crucial, and who put them there? To understand that, we need to start with what humans first believed about them. So, Avalonian locals generally believe and know of a certain tale of events that the legendary heroes Merlin and Arthur erected the Menhirs to protect the first settlers during what's called the Age of Legends, and that Menhirs were built in the center of towns to keep the encroaching weirdness at bay, and it succeeded to an extraordinary success. It was the only, it was like a reminder of the once and future king, Arthur, who undergoes his cycle of death and resurrection pretty much all the time. But anyways, in the core game, you hear about this story pretty early on from villagers, and in the RPG, some dialogue references it as well, especially in the Horns of the South here. And here's a line from the core game. Let me get this up. This is a line from the core game. You know Arthur raised the Menhirs to protect his people from weirdness. Everybody knows that. It's a classic Arthurian tale, really. Arthur, the noble king with Excalibur, and Merlin, the wise wizard, tame a savage land. For generations, this was the belief, but that tale is a myth. When humans arrived in Avalon from the homelands, fleeing their dying world due to the Red Death, they found the Menhirs already standing, their glow holding back the weirdness. My favorite scene in the board games was in the Age of Legends at the very beginning. It really had quite extraordinary artwork. I really can still remember that first time. It was pretty cool, and it had great and vivid imagery, and began such an epic tale. This is the quote. The sights, sounds, and smells of the battle assault your senses. The fighting rages as ferocious as it is one-sided. The remnants of the human army fight to their last breath, while enemy cavalry, mounted on winged beasts, dive at them from the sky. Countless misshapen creatures prowl the battlefield, finishing off the wounded. Waves of war magic ripple through the air, stripping skin and flesh from bones. And then the description of the Menhir was around the same time. It was desperation driving you into the opening of this twisted statue standing watch at the edge of the battlefield. You never expected this dreadful thing to protect you, but the longer you stay pressed against the warm, weird stone wall, the more you realize it's done exactly that. Enemies pass without notice, giving the statue a wide berth. Clouds of weirdness swirl around your hideout. The truth is that they had no idea who built them or how they worked. The Age of Legends expansion lets you live this era, playing as heroes under Arthur. The human belief in Arthur and Merlin was a misunderstanding, a story that they told themselves to make sense of Avalon's mysteries. So, if Arthur and Merlin did not build them, then who did, and why? So, here's where the lore gets rather interesting and also confusing. The Menhirs weren't built by Arthur or Merlin. They were created by the fore-dwellers, an ancient non-human civilization that ruled Avalon long before humans arrived. In the core game, you uncover this through secrets and journal entries, though I inferred this early on due to the fore-dwellers and the Menhirs both just happening to have 4 arms. It was always peculiar to me, though, that the fore-dwellers would create these morbid statues that seemingly repelled their own creators. I mean, without the Menhirs, wouldn't all of Avalon be inhospitable to human life? The fore-dwellers could reign in peace then. Then came the final chapters of the core game, with another quote. Initially, these statues were a place of worship. You see, fore-dwellers believed that when they die, depending on the judgment passed by their gods, they either ascend to a higher plane of existence beyond the stars, or descend to the lower one. This cold, unmoving hell lacks the grace of weirdness, a place that takes their third eye as well as 2 of their arms, where they lead short, painful lives with little chance of ever reincarnating into higher beings. That would be our world. The Menhirs allowed the fore-dwellers to peer into this hell and commune with their dead. Merlin found a way to enhance these powers of these statues and extend their range, bringing the laws of our world to the entire vicinity of the Menhir. I found this so extremely fascinating, but the story of the Menhirs gets significantly more morbid and intriguing. At one point in the core game, you have a disturbing dream depicting the creation of a Menhir that your character first believes is impossible, given the prevailing myth that Arthur and Merlin must have erected them. A procession, unlike any you've witnessed, descends into underground corridors. Tall, inhuman figures, covered in white fabric from head to toe, proceed through the darkness, surrounded by floating lights. In the bowels of the island, they set to work. With alien tools and strange magic, they separate a block of solid weirdstone and move it to the surface. There, a figure lies on the slab. Its body slowly melds into the weirdstone, while the stone slowly takes shape of a body. Soon they are one, a solidified essence, neither dead nor living. Around the statue, the passage between realms of life and death is now permanently ajar. They place the weirdstone figure in the cold wastelands outside of the Tuatan walls. These sacrifices were sacred and revered by the people. My first time reading about the sacrifices in the board game, I was blown away. It's such a poetic but super dark twist. The lore isn't only found in the core game, though, as the new RPG adds something new to the equation. And this is why I felt such an interest in sharing my thoughts, as I know few likely played both the RPG and the 100-plus hour epic tale of the Tainted Grail board game and its expansions. A character described in the RPG by a fore-dweller named the Weaver mentions someone called the Prince, who invented the blueprint for Menhirs and their creation due to his fascination with humanity. His mother, the Pale Lady, sparked his interest in humanity. She had been observing the homelands, including Camland, where King Arthur reigned during the Red Death Plague. Humanity was mortal and had a different version of time. The prince's fascination with the differences between the two realities led to the invention of Menhirs, but creating a Menhir was not pleasant. A fore-dweller would sacrifice himself, melding his essence into weirdstone, a magical material infused with weirdness, becoming a sentient Menhir. I mean, imagine that, a living statue. Its fiery core pulsing with a fore-dweller's soul, and it wards off the weirdness and links the two worlds. It was seen as heretical at the time due to the fore-dweller's fear of human reality. It also may have been seen as heretical due to a fore-dweller's sacrifice being necessary, or because altering the weirdness may have been a grave sin at the time, since it could have altered the order of their weirdness-infused world. Right? Keep in mind that fore-dwellers, their reality is within the weirdness, right? That to them is normal. In response to the Menhirs, though, the prince was murdered by fore-dwellers, but his spirit survived. He ended up inhabiting Arthur, the once and future king, and participated in Arthur's never-ending cycle of death and resurrection. The prince's bodily death was the first fore-dweller on fore-dweller murder ever in history. However, according to the dream description of the procession, many of the fore-dwellers must have revered the sacrifice even at the time, and it made me question how I could possibly reconcile the two stories. In my research, I saw that even in the core game, there was actually a reference to the prince, but he wasn't called that, and is mostly alluded to in The Last Night. I did come across an interesting dream in the core game, though, that to me adds credence to the Weaver's recounting. It's a dream from the Pale Lady's perspective. Everything is dark. The only light is up, dim and cold. You swim inside the tower and prowl its empty corridors, eating raw fish, waiting for anything to happen. Were your kin to win the war against humans and punish you, for humans to finally slaughter your king. For your boy, treacherously slain by his enemies, trapped in an endless cycle of life and death, to reincarnate as a lesser being. Centuries pass, and you're still there in the cold and dark water, alone, abandoned, almost forgotten, waiting. This description of her boy does fit the Weaver's story and some details mentioned in The Last Night and in the Age of Legends, and shows that the prince must have had a following, but was killed by another powerful group of fore-dwellers with strong sway, or perhaps he had a rival. Over time, the Menhirs became accepted by the fore-dwellers as a whole. As described in the earlier passage, it even became a holy site and a place of worship. Eventually, Menhirs would have a new purpose. Their protective light shaped where humans built their villages. So, nowhere else was safe on Avalon's dangerous lands. But this raises another interesting question of, if the Menhirs were so powerful, then why are they failing now? By the core game, as well as in the RPG and in Conquest, the Menhirs are fading. Their light dimming and settlements are falling to weirdness. So why is this happening? All I can really go on is conjecture, but there are a few things detailed in the board game, and I do have a few thoughts. So, in Age of Legends, two interesting events occur, but I'll try to keep the details minimal to avoid any spoilers. For one, the heart of the weirdness is reshaped in a climactic fashion, and for two, Merlin invented something called Menhir rights, which extended the range of the Menhir's protection to allow for humanity to live in larger swaths of land all across Avalon. These two events may have either affected the weirdness or the Menhirs in such a way that they are now fading. My second thought is that the fore-dwellers are gone, so they've been endangered from conflicts that may have arisen from the prince's murder, the weird surges that have been occurring, and likely a good portion of the reason why a lot of them are dead is because of the Age of Legends. It was a pretty brutal loss. Well, it was actually a pretty brutal loss for both sides, but it was a pretty brutal loss for the fore-dwellers. Without them, none can renew the Menhirs' Weirdstone magic without the proper rituals, which only a few know of. I remember struggling in the core campaign to relight Menhirs and burning resources while the weirdness closed in. It was pretty brutal. Humans don't know the fore-dweller rituals, and the human solution may not have been sufficient. So perhaps without the guidance of the fore-dwellers, the Menhirs slowly fade. My last thought as to what is leading to the fading is this. So remember what Menhirs are again. They are fore-dweller souls bound to Weirdstone. Though fore-dwellers are immortal, perhaps being the bridge between the immortal reality of the fore-dwellers and the mortal world of humanity is leading to the soul's painful and slow decay into mortality, and therefore death. I know that's a lot, but one line that really struck home for me in this theory is something I mentioned earlier, namely that Merlin, quote, brought the laws of our world to the entire vicinity of the Menhir. So could the laws of our world not also include mortality to the fore-dweller's soul that was immortal? So with every use of Merlin's Menhir rights, though the range of safety is maintained for the human settlements, it is also killing the Menhir soul. So the sentient guardian endures and observes its long-lost kin as it slowly fades into darkness. So, Menhirs do shape Tainted Grail's gameplay and tone, especially in the core game. In the board game, lighting Menhirs reveals new locations, but only 3 can be active at once, so you're forced to make tough decisions. Deactivating one lets the weirdness reclaim the area. It's a gut punch in terms of the story, because time is ticking, and it can delay things a substantial amount. Some players hated this grind, but it does mirror Avalon's desperation and pain. In Last Night, Menhirs are rarer, making the activation not as grindy since you have so few. The video games use Menhirs more as lore markers, but they're still iconic. Fans seem to like them or are interested in them. You can check out BoardGameGeek for photos of painted Menhir miniatures, which I will have in the video, some of them at least. They have their glowing in twilight or fiery hues. It is actually really cool. I love what they did there. Menhirs blend Celtic myth and dark fantasy, making them Tainted Grail's soul. They're a reminder of sacrifice and survival, resonating across all of the Tainted Grail games. The Menhirs are Tainted Grail's heart, connecting humans, fore-dwellers, and the weirdness in a story of sacrifice and loss. From their sacred fore-dweller origins to their tragic decay, they define Avalon's rise and fall. Whether you see them in Conquest, the RPG, or while you're grinding in the board game, Menhirs are definitely unforgettable and a staple of Tainted Grail. I hope this deep dive gives you new insights. For video game fans, the board game's lore is really a treasure trove. If you're interested in that, trust me, it is worth checking out and a ton of fun. I know many people who play the board games probably are not as interested in the RPG as well, so I hope the mentioning of the Weaver is likely something you were not aware of, so perhaps that added more as well for your knowledge repertoire. For video game fans, I appreciate you. For board game fans, I appreciate you. But anyways, guys, you are all the best. I appreciate all the likes. I appreciate all the views. You guys are all awesome. Please tell me what lore you'd be interested in me covering next time, like the Everdweller, which I think is super fascinating, the Tainted Grail, or perhaps just the history of Avalon. So please like and subscribe if you'd like more. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day. And I really do hope to see you guys later. But yeah, bye-bye. Say bye, Corco. There you go.